The newest trend on the internet has been all of these Gen Zers complaining about the 40-hour work week. And although many people are pointing to the Federal Reserve and the inflation of the money system, they're not getting the full picture. By the late 1800s, people worked 10 hours a day for 6 days a week, 60-hour work weeks. But that was forever changed by Henry Ford, who reduced the work week to 40 hours. He believed that 8 hours a day, 5 days a week was enough, and people needed one extra day to spend with their family and one day for the Lord. This guy was pro-people. He paid his workers double the salary of every other company in the industry. And your salary automatically went up if you were married and for each kid that you had. And he offered bonuses to workers for being sober and living a moral life. He even had his staff create a list of jobs that could be done by blind and disabled people. He hired them and paid them double the salary of able-bodied people that worked for his competitors. Now, this is all about to come together. As in 1913, a small group of powerful bankers gained a monopoly over the printing of money through the creation of the Federal Reserve Act. This is the start of the inflation that everyone talks about, and it also gave the banks the ability to do something called fractional reserve banking, essentially to lend out money that they don't have. So if you were to put $100 in a savings account, the bank could take 90 of those dollars and lend them out to someone else. You still have the right to that $100, so now there's $190 in circulation, but the banks could charge interest on the person they gave the loan to, the $90. And this is how they started to get everyone into debt. This would be amplified in the 1960s when Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Great Society. The banks could now give out loans to everyone. All of a sudden, everyone had a mortgage, everyone had a college loan. But by guaranteeing there'd always be a supply of money for houses and for college, they also guaranteed the price of those things would go exponentially higher. So at first it was great. Everyone gets a house. Everyone gets college. But by the time Gen Z got here, you can't go to college. You can't get a house without going into crippling debt. Now that's what you call laughing all the way to the bank, because the banks are paid interest on all of that debt. In fact, most people are shocked when they find out that the majority of our federal income taxes go to paying back interest on debt. It doesn't go to infrastructure or the military. It goes to paying back the banks for the money that they printed out of thin air. This is inflation from usury, the practice of giving out loans and charging interest for the money. But it doesn't just inflate the price of money, it deflates the value of your time. So the things you used to get for 40 hours of work now requires 120 hours of work. But there's only 24 hours in a day and you can't get more of it. Now, Henry Ford did not want people in debt because the Bible said that usury is a sin. And Ford took this stuff seriously. So he created a school in which the tuition was free. In fact, he paid you a salary for going to the school. The catch was that you couldn't touch the money. It had to go into a savings account until you graduated. And when you graduated, you would have a job waiting for you and lots of money in your pocket. Ford and most Americans were really against usury at the time. In fact, if you go back to the 1950s, there was something called state usury laws. Financial institutions weren't allowed to charge more than 6% interest. Well, today, Americans pay an average of 27% interest on their credit cards. And that's because the state usury laws were deregulated by the Monetary Control Act in 1980. It gave financial institutions the ability to charge as much interest as they wanted. But again, that wouldn't have been a problem under Ford because he had his own credit program, in which you could buy a car from him on credit but pay 0% interest. It required a down payment and preset installments, but no interest, no usury. And this practice of usury, which wasn't always the norm in America before 1913, would ultimately steal the wealth from our future, hence the crying Gen Zers. And that usury, along with the free trade lie, would ultimately steal America's wealth, our jobs. But I'll get into that another day. Check out my books on how information is controlled, rights fundamental to being an American, the history of the banking system, the history of fake news, and much more. And my homeschool company if you want me teaching your kids. ClassicalLearner.com.